It is 7:01 on August 8th. I'm going to call the Jericho Affordable Housing Committee meeting to order. Tonight will be a big working meeting. We'll start with public comment as always, review the letter and AHC feedback for the town plan and discuss what the next steps will be. Next, we'll outline procedures for reviewing and responding to DRB applicants. Then brainstorm a little on how to be a YIMBY, and we can talk about that more when we get to that item. Liaison updates, other business, and review for September agenda, and then adjourn. Any changes or concerns about the agenda?
Are we going to hear a report about the farmers?
And other business, I thought I might. It's not much to report, but
You should be recognized.
And there is no public to be heard, so we'll skip straight to agenda item 3. So let me just briefly talk about where we're at, and maybe Eric, you can, if you don't mind, catch us up with where the Planning Commission is at and what the schedule is for drafts and whatnot. So on August 1st, I took all of the comments from our July meeting, put them into the slideshow that was pretty similar to what we all saw in the meeting, and presented that. And a lot of what went into that presentation was both stuff that we discussed, but also was language from the document that Chuck and Frederica had put together earlier. So just want to give credit where that's due.
Well, there's some other stuff in there. There was Chuck and Frederica, and then there's Frederica when things got a lot better.
I think they got incrementally much better when we got to the slide set.
That's why we work in committee, and we don't work in a vacuum. We're better together. That was PC. And that meeting, committees had been invited to provide some feedback before the second draft comes out. And so what we'll talk about in a second is a letter that, again, is the latest draft that I got from Frederica, that incorporated everything from our July meeting and what I presented, and put that all into one document. And then we can discuss that document and what we want to do moving forward, because the timeline for the town, my windows are open. Are they?
Well, we lost our minutes taker and our chair.
Huh?
We lost our chair
And our minutes.
and our minutes.
Hearing aids. And were the windows open?
They were false alarm, although I think Wayne is checking everybody's just to be sure while he's out there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I remember the truck window was all the way down when he first came in.
Went on, so you would put it up.
So my understanding is that there's a pretty tight turnaround, that the draft that we all saw, which was draft 1 only of volume 1, is being kind of drastically reworked, and that on August 15th, next Tuesday, will be draft number 2 of volume 1, And then the first time people will see volume 2, which is all the appendices and a lot of the supporting documentation. So the question is, we can think about, the original idea would be to provide this initial feedback, which we've communicated to David White and to the Planning Commission already, but have it formalized and have it be a public document that we can, okay, my family's fine. Have it be a formal document that we can submit, have on the record, and have available for future reference. And then when volume 2 or when draft 2 comes out, we will then have another opportunity to go through and look at that and provide direct feedback and edits and wordsmithing and that kind of thing, because draft 1 was really kind of just draft 1. And so the idea is, do we want to do that in 2 separate processes, which I kind of think we do because they feel like 2 separate documents to me, but we can discuss it. Or do we hold on to this document that we have, supplement it with feedback for draft 2, and then submit it as one big thing, since everyone's gotten this feedback verbally already.
And was this the document that you had the slides that you presented that you sent out a week or so ago?
So the
One we're talking.
what I'm talking about is the letter that, yeah, the slideshow is just a brief, it was only 10-minute presentation of what is encompassed in this document that I sent around really late, and I
there's another
apologize for that.
Oh, another document. Okay.
It's longer.
Sure.
And I do want to make sure that we have a chance to kind of talk about and edit that document, because the last time we saw it, I think some people wanted to discuss further before sending it, giving it the stamp of approval. How do you think the Planning Commission meeting went August 1st? What was your kind of?
I felt that there was a lot of statements and comments made that had not been adequately considered in the initial round of the town plan. There may be some confusion coming out as we shorten the document that was presented to us into something that's manageable and digestible. I believe that the appendices or part 2 of the document, which will have all of the details, will be clearer because of that.
Yeah.
The input we got, and I'm not speaking as the Planning Commission because that's not my role, but the input that I heard and that I think was received by the rest of the Planning Commission was around things that were missing. Connectivity in some of the natural resource areas coming through with that, connectivity in some of the transportation areas, issues around where bike paths could, or trails could or should be, and how to make that statement, which is in there about we need to have those more of a reality. Comments about some of the historical pieces, but not as much. That was sort of off on the side. Not a lot of comments came in from the economic side, which kind of surprised me. The Community and Economic Development team there, the Jericho Development Corporation, talked a little bit, but not very much. Most of it was just to clarify, you said this, what do you mean by it? How's it come through? And I think David took that to heart. And when we see the next draft on Tuesday, actually PC is supposed to get it on Friday, so we have a weekend through. We'll see if that happens. I think we'll see a shorter, more concise document that states the goals and objectives more clearly. I believe from where I sat, the way that this committee, the Housing Committee, presented was taken to heart as something we should be doing. I felt very good when we heard the Planning Commission adopt some of the date and certain pieces we put into our pieces as what should be in there. Particularly when we talked about it, we presented the first structure wastewater treatment by 2028. That was something that was treated as that is a goal that we should conclude. And I was very happy to see that.
Wow, that's great. I'm confused. This is the second this is the second
No.
meeting of your review of the town, you met once on the town plan or twice?
The town planner met with the planning commission. Early July or July 14th, something like that.
No, how many on, after his first draft?
That's it. We haven't had
There's
any
only been
draft.
one meeting.
It's only been one meeting.
No.
There's not been a second draft delivered. He delivered to the planning commission his draft.
Yeah.
The planning commission sent that draft out to committee members. Last week, the committee members presented to the planning commission their feedback on it with the consultant there. The consultant is now presumably deeply engaged in incorporating the feedback into draft 2.
But you're right, there was a meeting,
I did public comment twice. That's great if I could do 2 for every meeting.
there was a meeting before the committee members were there when it was the first time the planning commission had seen it.
Yes.
And yeah, the
That was the week
PC,
before
that was
this.
the week before. So,
So
yeah.
in a
Um,
sense, yes, it is a second, but the planning commission intentionally put in this second meeting to get input. from
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
the committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, you did do the same presentation for us.
It wasn't the same presentation.
It was simple.
The first one was not about housing. I think the economic development one people respond to that when the town has the ability to do something.
Yes.
And right now, there's, you say here 2 things. One is, I kind of like services for me. And there isn't much, I'd like to figure out how more people can make a living here in Jericho, so they don't have to drive and so they can participate more easily and, have better lives, and blah, blah, blah. And I think it's like, there's only so many of those types of debates you can have at once, and that will be, I believe the next town plan will have a lot of interest, economic development.
If you mean by the next town plan review. So we're gonna get the draft 2 next.
No, I mean like 5 years from now.
5 years.
It's like right now, nobody believes we can do anything, because we don't.
We don't have waste.
Right, it's just not an issue, but once we have a town manager that can do something and things are happening, then I think people will take an interest because there
But
is a possibility.
so I mean, I listened to this meeting online once it was on the YouTube. And I came away with, the input from the committees, and I think your input was great because it was so organized and it gave them something that they can, if they want to, just import. And I think that may be useful. I don't know whether they'll do
Those
that.
slides
I
are
think it'll
really
be
good.
useful.
Of all the presentations, Affordable Housing Committee was the most buttoned down. And done.
We rocked it, guys. We rocked it.
But I have the impression that the goal to really streamline volume 1, there's an inherent danger to it, which is to be more about the goals and less about the action plan. And it would be nice to have both in volume 1. So we're gonna have to watch out for that, because David White's whole layout was about kind of like goals and big ideas, and less about, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this. And I think that should be in volume 1.
Well, again,
So,
my position on it, speaking as a member of the planning commission, is that I will be pushing for date certain goals,
Mhm.
just as I pushed for those with the affordable housing
Right.
resolution.
yeah,
Without a goal, without a date, it's wishful thinking.
because it's a plan.
Right, if it's a plan.
Yeah.
So,
It's supposed to be a plan. Yeah, good.
So, yeah, that's gonna be,
Yeah.
you'll see those emerging more. And we will have to rely on some of the other committees. For example, the Natural Resource Committee, who's got a mapping, to give us a date when that will be done. So we can act upon it,
that's
Mhm.
great.
and how frequently we get updated, or any of the infrastructure. Obviously, there's the wastewater treatment map. There's also the bicycle path, which has been on the board. I believe this is the second or third iteration of the bicycle path between JES and Browns River in the last 8 or 9 years. Where's the date? When is it gonna get done?
Mm.
So,
And then we need to make sure the select board knows that they're committing to these things. Then they'll show an interest
yes,
in having government, the government that we need. I think at some point, the planning commission is gonna have to take over the writing. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, in this sort of
Yeah.
process, there's a point where
Yeah,
he's guessing what you want. When you have sort of mixed, you know, it's like he's guessing what he wants. And not what you want, and he's also got his own point of view. I mean, he's got his own, I mean, he's, you know, he lives in his point of view. And, you know, at some point when it gets down to the point where it's doable, I hope that, because the people in the planning commission speak very clearly.
Mhm.
And that needs to come through in the document. And, you know, the one thing that I hope, you know, at least, you know, I'm hoping for like a little more evangelical zeal, you know, along the lines of, you know, we screwed up, but now we're really going to invest in making a change, but we screwed up along with 100,000 other towns. Now we're going to try to make it right. Everybody's going to have a good chance.
But I think one of the limitations again, I think these soil maps are relatively new. Because a year or so ago, remember I
Yeah.
presented one at the committee and it was from, I don't know, 1979. They just said these big blobs that we think this is Dickinsonian, sandy loam and this is grout. But now from the LiDAR map, and it's like right down, I can see a little patch of gravel not far from your house. It's only as big around as this room here
Mhm.
on the map. I mean, they've got it down within meters of where the thing actually owns.
So talk further. What does that mean?
Oh, so there's 83 different soils in Jericho. And only a handful of the types are conducive for doing in-ground purification. So if you're over gravel, you don't want that because it will go right down to the bedrock and into the
Right.
water table. If you have clay, it's gonna bubble up and stay on the top. So there's a certain kind of sand that they want that you can now put your gravel bed in. And then it's like, it's gotta be 36 inches above the highest of the high water table. And then after it digests in the gravel, you can actually finish filtering before it gets down further into the ground and then.
So how hard would it be to get a map of where the appropriate places to put septic is?
I think there is one in there, their version 1.
Oh, so it exists.
Yeah.
So
And
with the new data is on the planning.
Not on, like, no, you have to go to,
in the maps in their documentation for that?
not at that one. I think you have to go to the Soil Conservation Service, one of those sites to
You
find.
can do that, but I included one in a meeting we had a year ago that showed where the good soils in Jericho
So-
were.
wasn't that what the survey
Someone
was supposed
should
to
put
be
that-
about?
We should,
They know where that is,
Yeah.
they're trying to say, okay, of
Yeah.
these soils, this is.
So that's what the
yeah.
survey.
we need to get that blown up.
Can I read?
You know what, I
return
can
us
send
to
you
the duty of the Affordable Housing Committee and not the Planning Commission, and what else do we have to deal with in this case?
So question 1 is, do we want to formalize our feedback using the draft document that I've got in front of you now and hopefully approve it tonight so I can deliver it tonight or tomorrow morning? And then provide a secondary round of feedback that I imagine will be much more targeted and specific kind of edits and comments on draft 2. Or do we want to combine them all into one thing?
So I'm in favor of submitting it now. That's
Okay.
actually what was said at the end, but that's kind of the expectation.
That is the expectation.
You know, we can always submit it again or something based on it. You know, later.
Okay. Does anyone feel differently?
I wonder,
I mean, I agree, but I'm like,
because say David is already rewriting pieces.
Well, and that's again, like everything that is in this draft has been communicated to David and to Linda and Susan. We sat down with the initial, one of the earlier drafts of the concerns for around land use regulations. And so they have seen all of this either in a meeting or in public session. So this would just be formalizing it, rubber stamping it, and making it a publicly available document.
I think, I definitely would like to finish it off, vote it and submit it as, and maybe rather than, recommendations to the planning commission, like recommendations to the town. Like this is, we've been at it for, we've been at this for a while now. We've thought about it. We've done a lot of planning commission meetings. We've looked at all, and basically this is our position right now.
Yeah.
And think of ourselves as an independent body. We have our own timeline. We're not staff to the planning commission. We are an independent body. We interact with the select board, the planning commission, like all these various things. So this is our position right now. It's a consequential moment. Okay, you're considering something, you're going to consider what they're considering. And we should present this to the planning commission as our position and to the select board as our position, like this is where we are. Then, if we have comments on volume 2, they sure better flow from this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if we go in, if basically at that point, we're saying, let me just explain one more time,
Yep.
here's, or what was your reason for, and this is our thing. And this is an independent body of work. And we should go present to the select board. We should present to the conservation commission. We should,
Okay, so with that in mind, does anyone have any, I'll walk us through a couple of things that especially after the planning commission meeting, that I feel like we need to make sure that are clear. But if you have had a chance to review the document, any edits, suggestions, things you want to bring up?
Which, this one here?
Mhm.
Yeah, I did. Let's see.
I have two kind of clerical things.
Yeah, give me the clerical things.
I think this little paragraph here is like the redundancy is, and I think we don't need to say growing and diversifying kind of right up front. What I would say that, you're committed to creating the conditions necessary to achieve Jericho's housing target resolution.
That's how the sentence ends, right? It ends with to achieve Jericho's housing target resolution.
Mhm.
You would just-
or
you would
maybe,
just cut out-
or maybe
cut
say
out-
affordable once or housing choice once.
And so this
You think it's
statement,
just too many
this
words?
statement came from the rewriting of David White's green box at the start of draft 1 of volume 1.
Okay, then make
And
it,
so
make
it
it a
was
little
the
clearer that it's
suggestion-
them talking. We're
Or
responding.
you want to simplify it is what you're saying. You want to.
Well, I thought this was something that we were saying.
No, we are saying it.
Okay.
We took it from him. but
We
are-
rewrote what
Yeah.
he said at our July meeting and rewrote it in this language.
Just like for growing and diversifying our population, offering housing choices to be affordable, to meet the needs of a wide range of
Oh,
individual
you think it's
household
too
types. It's
redundant?
like you cover the ground a couple different times.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think,
Yeah,
I would
I
take
see.
out growing and diversifying because I think that just triggers a whole bunch of other stuff that basically we're
The
talking about.
growing does, yeah.
And
So what about cutting out everything from 4 to the dash?
or we could say. Or take it out. It's like the preamble, why not start with the first box or something? Or this is our, this is the current position.
It's kind of a mission statement, right?
It's the current position of the
Yeah,
Affordable Housing Committee.
It's like a vision.
As of
It's
August
a
2023, this is what we think.
it's
Yeah.
a vision statement that then says, and in order to achieve that, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I do want to push back and say that we want to be clear about what that vision statement is. We don't want to reference a vision statement. So but you're right, it is redundant and wordy.
And then
Which
the-
is-
The only other one that I had was, that's the last page. Where simplify or sunset form-based code. We talked about by the end of 2023 before.
Yeah, how did we write
Right
it?
now
in
it's
the-
I think we
We wrote,
did we have a timeline on
maybe we didn't put it.
it? We
in
had at some
caps.
point.
I mean, sunsetting implies a timeline.
Hmm.
You can't sunset something.
2024.
Oh, it says by 2024, right? Right.
Well, it's January 2024? Or,
Yes, it was a rewrite of the
It says revise.
character-based zoning by the end of, by January. It's actually now top of the list for planning commission to do that.
Okay, so by Jan 2024.
Okay.
if they're doing if they're saying January, let's say December.
No, it's,
Pushing extra pressure probably won't be good.
No, but it,
January 24th has already been accepted by the planning commission.
right.
Trying to say that we're more powerful than they are doesn't.
We're not saying that. We're making a recommendation to the town about the urgency.
Anyone else,
so,
general or specific comments before I direct our attention?
There are a number of pieces of this that were appropriate in presenting to PC. But if this is becoming more of an action statement, we have things that are, one, not really particularly, this is an affordable housing issue. And two, are not particularly relevant to what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay,
I think they should just come out.
can you give me what those are?
Yeah, the affordability piece where we go through and say, according to our regs, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
That's irrelevant to the principles of what we're doing. We are about affordability. If we want to put in a definition, what is affordability? That would be okay, but just saying, there's all these different regulations, blah, 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 blah. It's not telling anybody something they don't already know if they're on the.
David didn't know when he wrote the first
yeah,
draft.
no, it's a little bit pushing back on what you wrote, I think. Right? So
It was a
we
big
could
mess.
make it more concise, but that's why it's in there.
Then we should say the town of Jericho should adapt an affordability measure that looks like this. As opposed to, we want to prioritize, and have more options, this means any definitions, we don't know. This is the definition the town of Jericho should take, and we want more of it.
So
That
we
is
could
within
do
our
that by
purview.
just keeping those first three lines and cutting out the rest.
As you define what it means.
See where we are?
Thinking of in the last paragraph.
So cut out the bullets and keep, oops,
Yeah.
Oops, the opposite.
cut out the bullets.
Yeah, cut out the things with the dashes.
Okay,
Some people might not know what,
Spell out AMI.
or even the under, and I think you might wanna. Like. Under.
Hmm.
Under 80%. Just kind of really spell it out, 80%,
Instead of using
blah, blah, blah,
mathematical.
and which is. And then under. It's real shorthand.
AMI is,
Area median income.
yeah, area median income.
I think.
But I mean, in the end, this is something that
So I
we're,
think less
not-
than 80% goes right after low, and middle income goes less than 20%.
But
okay.
I would put in the dollar figure also.
Well, that changes every year.
yeah,
The percentage,
Pardon?
dollar figure changes year over year, the percentage doesn't.
I understand that. Well, you could say 2023 and, whatever. Because I don't think people know what. If you were to ask somebody what 80% of the AMI is, I think they have no idea. You have a wide range of guesses.
This is gonna be in force for 8 years.
Pardon?
This will be in force for 8 years.
All right, we have dates in here in 2023.
So 2028, what is it? I didn't know in 2023. Am I
You can
gonna-
say you can say under 80%, under 120 of AMI. Which in 2023 was this.
Now you're relying on the reader to be able to do the math of how much inflation has changed that over the last 6 years. I don't trust readers on that. They can look it up if they really care.
That's ridiculous. We
I
should
mean,
explain
to
it.
some extent, what we're writing here is also a suggestion, right? I mean, we're not dictating what's gonna be in the town plan. So we can do whatever we wanna do in here, and they won't necessarily take it.
What was the other that
In
should come
the
out?
land use, natural resources, the first bullet or dash, I think is, again, it's not about housing, it's about something that's good land use management. And the paragraph, or the sentence of small and compact multi-housing. I think we can take out that therefore may be more appropriate. This may preserve a wildlife corridor better than clearing multiple large lots.
So this is what a area that I do want to take a minute to talk about, because I think that there was some confusion by members of the Planning Commission about really what we meant here.
Mhm.
And do you agree, Eric? You were in that meeting.
Mhm.
And so wanting to be really crystal clear about what we mean here.
The whole paragraph?
Small compact or multi-unit housing.
The thing about natural resource mapping in general. I
Just
think-
the general topic that I think that some members heard that as we want to do away completely with zoning and not use zoning at all. And that's not what we're arguing, I don't think. And so I want to make sure that we're articulating really clearly what we mean here, that really this started from, I mean, there's a lot of things that fed into this, but this originally started from really identifying the fallacy of the 10-acre lot as the best way to conserve land and natural resource and protect natural resources. And that there are, you guys are getting antsy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there's probably a place for that, because if you look at some of the areas, I mean, my wife was just telling me there was a black bear walking around in South Burlington. So, in talking to the conservation people, their idea is to keep the upper elevations where the animals are there most of the time, down here. So there could be a point where they want to keep contiguous areas, and maybe that's an area for 10-acre zoning. The other thing is too that on the upper, allergies right now. On the upper elevations, again, you have to think about accessibility, who's gonna drive a bus up there, who's gonna drive a fire truck, and that kind of stuff. So I think there might be places for 10 acres.
And I
when it
think,
comes to balancing with the.
and I think that,
that's kind of what this is all about. It's about, not that there shouldn't be, however large zone, but I think there's 2 points being made in that paragraph. One of them is that, natural, as you just explained, natural resources kind of determine where, and it does and does not make sense to build,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I think we all would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then the other point that we're making in that paragraph is, if you do decide that a place is buildable, then it's against our principles, including our inclusion principles, to make that an impossible area for people of average or lower income to live. So those are 2 different points. They're linked, but those are 2 different.
Yeah.
points.
I think what we're doing is, we want to be able to, when we next look at zoning, to be able to relook at the PUDs. And if people are ready to, to see, instead of one enormous house, a bunch of little houses on a 10-acre zone, it's like, to duplicate Lafayette Drive right now would require like over 300 acres. to do what was done on 10.
Mhm.
So we could go back to the old pubs where I used to live over here, little 700 square foot capes in the front. Now the houses, the bigger houses in the back have been added on to, so they're bigger than they were back in 83. But, you know, if somebody said, I'm gonna build 30,000 square foot houses, say, all right, well, the first one will be 800 square foot condo.
But you could also say, you could, like, we're not, I don't know if it's 10 acres or maybe it's 5 acres, you could say, in this area,
Oh, yeah. It's
in this
10 acres
area,
and you put a
any,
PUD.
any additional house under 1,000 square feet doesn't require additional land.
And how you can divide it up.
Or, yeah, I mean, it could be, it's a PUD, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be, you know, that would be the plan, you wouldn't have to add 10 acres for every, 950 square foot house.
Right.
So I think the compact development and small homes are absolutely consistent and can be consistent with priorities of land use areas like rural ag, or in areas where we are interested in conserving natural resources.
And maybe that's the way we should say it, that way around, just like you said.
What did I just
Because
say?
that compact developments are consistent with
Preserving open land.
preserving open land and
Natural
natural resources if you put them in an area
in
that
areas
is
that can
informed
support
by. Yeah, where building is informed by. So you turn it around and then it becomes more clearly about housing
Yeah,
and less confusing, I think. Although it's still going to be very confusing to many people that we think that you can build out in the boonies when everybody is, when we talked to Susan and her feedback was that the emphasis really is on providing affordable housing more in the centers. And I think that is still like something where there's a discrepancy between how that is seen by Susan and a lot of other people, I think, and how we.
well, and this
It's
is,
grown really hard to imagine small houses in the rural area. It's like just to imagine it. I mean, you have to go, like, when you go up to Barber Farm and you can see like these 10 little houses together, it just seems like you just entered Oz. You don't see that.
It is like Oz. I mean, when you brought me up there, it is like Oz, and I've thought about that. Part of that is because it was a summer camp. It's like a very specific place.
PUD.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't
You
summer camp for
could
kids,
design-
it was a resort, it was.
Yeah. It was summer residences, and
Yeah.
you could design a PUD like that, as you're saying, and I think that is. Otherwise, you can't engineer affordable housing in any rural area because. As we are learning from what's being built around here, it's always going to be non-affordable unless you engineer it somehow. By changing PUD rules.
Yeah, that's where the infrastructure comes in, because I was reading the planning and zoning for Richmond. And, they've had their wastewater since, 60s or 70s. But anyways, they have it all planned out, you can go down, you can have 4 units on one piece of, quarter acre or something like that. And you can put in the density, make the smaller, more affordable houses, but you have to hook up to their pipes. And that would be something that we would want to consider, that when we get our infrastructure, that if you say, okay, I want to put in 4 little houses in a cottage court, let's say, you have to hook to the pipes, you can't.
Or have like a community septic or something.
That would be a preliminary step.
You need a real development to start, which is
Yeah.
why another like part of the crime or disappointment on Morgan Road, where they built wastewater for somewhere between like 27 and 36 bedrooms on 5,000 square feet. That volume
It's because
could have
that's the
contributed to
economic
the Jericho
incentive.
Center system,
Yeah,
and it would be really helpful to have like, particularly Jericho Center and in Riverside, to have like a chunk of something coming in. Like maybe, 30 new units along Plains Road, which is a quarter of an acre, or like something like that to be like the anchor. Because at least in Jericho Center, most of us don't need it.
Does this section need any other tweaking?
I think that last bullet, not allowing housing. Yes, it's a nice statement. But there's nothing in the town plan that says you can't do that. There's nothing, the last bullet, not allowing housing that is accessible to it. It's a statement of intent. It's not relevant to natural resource mapping. It's only relevant to sort of a mission statement of what we at the Affordable Housing Committee are saying. We should allow it wherever we can.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel right to me in there, in that section, because that section is about natural resources.
And the argument is that
Natural resource is not what's preventing that happening.
no, but it's the argument that people use to prevent it from happening.
Right, there's a whole,
I'm not sure I agree with that statement. I don't have any factors that would back it up to say.
The
Well-
10-acre zoning, people don't say that the 10-acre zoning and the 3-acre zoning is to protect natural resources.
absolutely, that's.
They do,
Right, so that's,
but that's a zoning issue and.
But that's the logic argument that is being used to justify the exclusion, so
We already say that in the very top, diverse housing type should be exclusively possible in all areas of residential building. So that's already saying natural resources is not an excuse to say you can't have small housing.
okay,
And it's
Yeah, it just repeats that, it adds the declaration.
Okay.
of inclusion, but,
that's convincing.
yeah.
Anything else?
Prominent that.
the village infill center. I'm not sure what we're trying to say with that. Other than it's privately owned and people don't want to sell it.
I think what we're doing, we're using this to support other points, which is, it's very easy for the majority of people who don't live in the village center. You just say, well, we're gonna put all the little people in the village centers. And-
Is that a principle or is that just a statement of fact?
It's something we want to get across. What we want to get across is, for 20-something years now, we've been saying, well, the infill is gonna happen, and now people say, well, now it's really gonna happen. And our observation is, we're all for it, all favor, we'll do anything possible to support infill, but we are simply not gonna reach our housing goals with infill. And a lot of people have, the chairperson of the select board thinks we're gonna meet their housing goals with infill. And we're communicating
So
with them too.
Not without infrastructure.
Well,
Yes,
but I'm saying, we need to disabuse people of the view that infill is gonna solve, it's gonna address our housing.
The reason that this is an important point is because it supports the fact that we want to kind of engineer a way for affordable housing elsewhere as well. And part of the way to do that would be to work with PUD rules, density and stuff. Another way to do that is to allow multifamily housing everywhere. So those are two other things that we are promoting elsewhere. And this is kind of the rationale for why we are promoting that in part. Because you can't just solve the whole affordable housing committee in the village center. That's why that is there. That's why that's there. Maybe it's in the wrong place.
I think you could say something to the effect of the time delay to get infrastructure to the village centers could mean that you mentioned some of these other ideas would help us get there, but it just seems like speculation. Right? Land is privately owned, most somewhere no desire to subdivide. Chuck already. Chuck?
It's based on really keeping track of where ADUs have been added. I've been in Jericho Center. I'm not coming out with a tone. I'm just saying I feel strongly that it's true. Because I live in a village center, I live where people want infill, I mean, I sort of see where it gets built, where it doesn't, and I have an ADU, so I kind of watch these things.
Mhm.
And I spoke with Chris Flynn and said and I spoke with, the wastewater guy who used to live next to the, store. Who owns property down Brown Street, Linda's brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too, like, yeah,
And I said, ask both of them, who's getting ADUs? And they said it's people who have a family need,
Mhm.
and then some people, when they buy a house, do an Airbnb. And that was like, both of them said the same thing, and they said was really, that's,
Mhm.
and it, to me, it's intuitively obvious that someone is gonna. Someone who's, I mean, most people aren't comfortable with construction or investing or, blah, blah, blah. Or real estate, and the idea of doing something on their property is,
but the concern is that we're talking about how we need the infrastructure, and it almost is like you're saying, yeah, but, I think it. it can
I
be
think
reworked,
that
but I-
sufficient is doing a lot of work here.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing is, yeah, it's not sufficient, but at the same time, you don't want to let anyone take their focus off.
No, absolutely
Because
not.
that's really a critical accomplishment to get this stuff done. The other
No,
thing,
that's true. It's, I mean, and that we say that elsewhere, that infill, like
Yeah.
at the beginning, that infill is like one of the priorities. This is just, but we have to do other things because maybe we could just shorten it, to make it less of a standard.
And this
Sarah,
list
Actually,
is,
what you've done with the expanding potential areas,
yeah,
I believe that is probably the appropriate thing to say, that if you, to planning commission and select board, anybody else, if you think it's just village infill, that's not going to work. And we need to expand beyond the village centers to make this happen.
mhm.
yeah,
Stop.
those two.
And then just
pretty
cut
much.
out the rest, or because it explains why.
I think
There
we
is
need
a
to
lot of-
explain why, we're trying to
there-
communicate.
What I've heard in.
Did you
in
really
this-
think people don't know why?
Yeah,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
because
Wayne Howe, multiple times in the meeting says, we passed the quarter acre zoning and nothing happened, I don't understand why. And he says, oh, infrastructure, okay?
so
He doesn't,
actually,
but
there-
there's plenty of people who could have added an ADU in the village centers,
They don't.
and they don't, okay? And people need to understand that they're just, and David said at the last meeting, it's a pretty slow process, it's gonna take time,
So.
We have
so
like,
at
what,
the same
20 in the
time-
whole
At the
town
same
now?
time, we presented this to Susan and Linda. And the feedback we got later was, we don't believe that the statement is correct that affordable housing should be able to be built everywhere. Because there's enough room to do this in the village centers, and people are very much in favor of infill and ADUs. And I said, really, are they? And where is this happening? And Linda and Susan both said, oh, no, that we've heard a lot of interest. We've heard a ton of interest in getting this done. And we know a lot of people that are very interested.
So we might be surprised, okay? This is what
So,
we think.
but that's,
This is what we've
A,
heard.
I'm still skeptical about that. And that's why B, I think we still need to
Well-
make that
Absolutely,
argument.
we need it in here.
And let me say too, that this section of the document was really about the messages that were off the mark in volume 1. This was really these were the three things that we as a group felt, and I interpreted on our behalf. So perhaps I got it wrong, but that we really felt really missed the mark in volume 1. And we wanted to underline where the mark actually is and be explicit about the argument.
So we need ADUs everywhere. So, yes, so we need one in your house. What's your response?
My septic system won't support it. I'm on a community septic, it's already tapped out.
And if you had capacity, would you do it?
Probably not.
Okay, why not?
I wouldn't do it either, because I.
How about you, Wayne?
I've been thinking of it, my
How
house,
long?
Probably since we started talking about it a year and a half ago,
Okay.
because I'll be 70 in December, so we have plenty of warning. That was a big, expensive present from me. But, you know, when I built my house, I don't know if you know which one it is, but it's Cape out there in the field. We lived in the first floor. The upstairs was just a barn. You could see the nails poking through from the side. And I did all that myself. And now going up and down that stairs, when we came back from California, both of us went down the stairs on our bed. So now I'm, you know, and her plan is to stay there for another 15 years. And what we would do is make the upstairs into something that someone could live there. The only thing I haven't quite figured out is what we do for a kitchen, but there's a bathroom up there. There's 3 bedrooms and an office. And that's part of my plan.
Okay, so I need to get us back on track.
HOA that says you can't.
I can't and I would love to. So, but it's for personal
Why
reasons
would
and not to
people
add
centers
rental.
Be any more likely to desire one than you.
But I need to get us on track. It's 7:50. So I apologize. I raised my voice and I just trying to get attention. I don't want to cut people off. So what, my question is, will keeping these bullets mean that you both feel uncomfortable approving this document?
I am not uncomfortable with it. Disagree with parts of it, but comfortable with it. Nothing that we are saying there to me is, oh my God, I never thought of that. And that in and of itself is kind of self-explanatory, that people looking at this should know, if you have any awareness of the world around you, why there are no ADUs being built after we pass the regulation on zoning.
Yeah.
Most people in town don't know that we have a regulation or that.
Most people don't want somebody else living in their house. Full stop. You had your kids, the kids left, you're alone, just the 2 of you. I don't want to share.
Until you get to be.
Right, so then let's stop planning on everybody doing it.
I just did want to say one last thing about the last bullet there. I think about this public transit, we probably won't get it, but there's something about the town of Jericho. You have like the speed table by your house, right, in front of the store. And you have things to slow traffic. So if we did want to, you know, focus on, when we get our infrastructure, you want to consider not the public transit is unlikely, but you want to encourage that sort of thinking because you might get ally, but mainly from the idea of traffic calming things like stop signs, speed tables, things like that, because you want to have curb cuts that don't have to be 200 feet apart. And so I'm just thinking that you might have allies that maybe the transportation doesn't work. They say, well, just in case of the transportation, but it will also help with curb cuts and traffic calming things if it did happen.
I think,
For a non.
I think you're making
the town in France. They had a 4-way intersection that people weren't stopping. So the town manager got out a roller and painted all kinds of squiggly lines across the intersection, so people didn't know where they were supposed to go, and they all slowed down.
I think we could, I think we could take that line out about the public transit is on. I could almost go somewhere else, but, or you know, maybe, I guess, yeah,
I don't
leave
think
it. Basically, of the fixed bus route is unlikely. But your other point is that to support infill, we need to do traffic calming and we need to all make those places a little more hospitable.
And so maybe it's a potential for a bus route is consistent with the infrastructure concepts, you know, traffic calming, you know.
Yeah.
Put it that way, because
But that's a different
One
section.
point is that if you have higher density people, you need to have slower speed of vehicles so that people can be comfortable on the streets.
Yeah.
And that does mean changing the street designs.
right,
through
because where
traffic
the
calming
bus stops
measures.
are up here on Route 15. You slow it down.
We could say, as long
But
as
that's not- but that's
as
not-
long as we're listing obstacles, one obstacle to infill in the village centers is tracked as speeding.
Yeah.
And like, and,
Yeah,
That
but I
is-
don't think that's unsurmountable. I think that can be changed pretty quickly. So I don't think it belongs there.
you're on the wrong committee if you can solve that. But.
Yeah, I maybe.
But we
it's
should,
because I'm in the
even,
house.
even if it's solvable, we should put it down. I think that's a really good point.
So you wanted to put an
So
impact
you want to
statement.
add that,
Higher density neighborhoods require slower traffic speeds. And pedestrian safety.
I just think that's not enough of an obstacle to counter.
I don't think that
It's
is,
not gonna make. an
that is an argument that people are making when they say infill is going to solve our problems.
No, but we're explaining one obstacle to infill is high speeds in the village center. In Jericho Center,
Okay, I don't want to, I think it's okay, and I'm really worried about time. Is this,
in Jericho Center, we had 2 families with children for 10 years. Once we got the sidewalk, now we got kids, now we got lots of kids.
All right,
Changes a neighborhood.
okay, one of the big takeaways, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it because I felt like we all knew it and it was in, I just didn't spend a lot of time on it because I had 10 minutes, was an impact statement.
One off of, you still have the boards of the quotes
Mhm.
from Front Porch Forum, just take
Mhm.
one off of there.
But I think you also want to spell instead of divers to diverse.
so.
This is just me
Part of it is-
randomly.
Part of it is up there, right? If you have
Placeholding.
no population or economic growth, declining student enrollment. It's already up there. So what were you thinking?
Sarah during the meeting went off on a really passionate speech about what the impact is. And
She was talking about
You could,
property taxes.
she was talking about property taxes, yep.
but you could make a statement at the end of that the result of this challenge is Jericho was getting older, less demographically diverse, fewer children attend our schools, and taxes on a per property basis are going up. That's what the challenge has meant to us as residents of Jericho.
So what was Sarah saying about property taxes? She wanted them or didn't want them?
We need more kids in the school to
Okay.
reduce some of that.
Because that's, in the early '80s, that's why so many lower income people left the town because of the growth of the population of the school, property taxes went up.
That's because we have a different method of making the taxes.
That
That was
Yeah,
town.
we got
rather
so
than-
tangled up in the
state.
school
Yeah.
tax thing last time when I didn't even want to.
Well,
I know.
I'm not sure, I don't have the facts that we have a dwindling number of households and children. We
Yeah,
have-
that data is pretty solid.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's from Vermont Housing Finance Agency. Our average household size has been decreasing. Yeah.
right, that if people go from 3 children to 1 child, you'd have many fewer children in the school system, but be the same number of households with children.
Or if you go from a neighborhood like mine, which 20 years ago had probably 3 or 4 kids for every family, at least 2 kids in every household. And
But-
now more than half the households have no kids. Like we got older, our kids grew up. We didn't do what we were supposed to do. We didn't sell the house and let somebody else come in.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine.
the other thing too is that the interest rates are killing. You can't find one to buy a house. I mean, I have 2.5%.
People don't want to sell
Where am I
either.
gonna get that?
They don't want to sell either.
Yeah.
You got a 3% mortgage.
If they come back down to 3% again, you will see people selling. Because of-
Can you change resulting in taxes are increasing to resulting in increased taxes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a economic Huh?
Sorry to be Mr. Grammar here.
No, I need it. There's a economic development argument in here too somewhere, but
Oh, I don't know if it's a part of the challenge, and I don't have a good enough sense of it, but does Jericho have fewer businesses now than it had 15, 20 years ago? Or is it about the same? If you go back 30 years ago, we had NATO's, the lumberyard there, which held employed probably 50, 20, 50, 60 people in it, something like that.
I feel like,
Is that where the Jericho market is from?
No, it's where Jericho is.
Oh,
David presented some of that, and I can't remember what
But
the,
it's a really hard thing to determine.
What the
I think a lot
data
of
was.
business- I think there's a lot more at-home businesses. And maybe the same number of slightly fewer retail businesses, but it's definitely something fewer.
so then the next steps are, the next steps are,
facilitating residential info, everybody's for that,
yep,
we just spelled it out.
expanding
Expanding
village
center
centers.
districts, which was kind of part of the thought and behind some of the maps
Mhm.
and behind some of what I think David White was thinking. So it kind of feeds into that.
I get concerned with some of David's maps that show the 5 and 10 minute walking distances. Because those are straight line distances, which don't take into account things like roads, streams, houses, neighbors' yards.
When does that stuff gets decided? Is that during zoning?
Yes.
So are his drawings just sort of illustrative at this point?
Mhm.
His drawing is a radius of 1 mile and 2 miles from the center of town,
As the crow.
without
flies.
respect to geography or terrain or
Right,
anything else.
right. Probably be hard to do more than that, but maybe it should be made really clear that this is just a, for instance, this is just a,
If you could walk in a straight line from
It's-
here to here,
it's
yes.
just an idea, this is just a way to represent the idea.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea, yeah, and the idea is if you made things more walkable, you could expand beyond what's currently the village center zone. You know, you could expand your
You'd have to
density.
change your roads, you'd have to change your neighbors' yards and create trails that aren't there right now.
No, just to make it more walkable. You'd have
Again,
to,
my house is within the 10 minute. Or the the 2 mile,
right.
whatever it is, like it's the 10, whatever the second zone.
Mhm.
It takes me 30 minutes to get here. Because I can't walk straight.
But I think the point is that even given that, there are areas that you can walk zigzag that are within 10 minutes that are not village
I think
center.
he was using the walkability as a way of showing how small our village centers are.
Right,
That it's really, they're really small and they should be a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I don't think he was like mapping out of like a walking thing. I think he was just saying, hey, you can walk 5, this is how small the village center is. You can just walk from here to here, it's on a 10 acre.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, so I think that we're not directly referring to his map.
Yeah.
We're just saying they're within walking distance.
And again, we might want to define what walking distance means.
We say
uphill,
within
downhill.
At least
1
1
to
to
1.5
1.5
miles.
Tell you what the walking distance. is
Again,
from
that's
center.
the crow that flies, but
but we're not writing regulations here. We're,
So could maybe the way to change it is instead of saying, no, you can't say time on that because people walk at different rates of speed.
but I think, I mean, we're all on the same page here about expanding village and village center districts, right? Okay.
But I'm not sure which part you're referring to as the 3 and 10 acres that are within that distance.
I was thinking about the family, the couple that came down from Ora Road and joined us at town meeting, and they walked here.
Yeah,
And they're in
They're
the 10
10
acre.
acres.
you're on the other side of Browns River,
Mhm.
and it's
The settlement.
and surrounded by homes on
patterns
1
there-
acre.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
settlement patterns there are not anything necessarily, and there are no working farms out there for them.
So they're working their farm.
No.
They wanna work
They
a
want-
smaller farm.
It's like, it's not a
Not
farm,
funny.
it's like raised beds. I mean,
Yeah, they have 5 acres and they would
Yeah.
build a house.
there's plenty enough room for them.
Yeah,
But I think it really just affects what's on that side of Browns River, because on this side, everything already is zoned.
yeah, I mean, when you look at the map, it's like. The center
So-
is kind of squished in one direction, and then in the other direction, it borders on. Rural agricultural,
Yes,
and there's like no transition zone there. Almost, so it's kind of squished, and that's not always necessary by. By any kind of natural law, I mean,
so perhaps a way to phrase as what you just said, create a transition zone from the village district to the lower density or larger lot size, which doesn't exist right now. You can go from 1/4 acre to 3 acres, or whatever it is.
You know, that would be like in a zoning conversation, it's just,
yeah, so we could make it more general.
I think once we like cross the threshold of like kind of designing this thing, we are gonna get lost. I mean, we're-
So you think
we're
it's already
saying a
too
basic
detailed the
concept.
way it is? So we could just get rid of the. Details. Those are example strategies down there.
Maybe we take out A.
Yeah, we could take out A. To not kind of be.
Well, that's
appear
kind of
prescriptive.
core.
No, we're just saying, we want to expand it. We're not trying, you're saying the 1 to 1.5 mile doesn't work, the time doesn't work, so that detail remains
Some
Mhm.
areas in Jericho are within walking distance of village centers
in
and
somewhere.
are zoned 3 to 10 acres.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a fine statement.
yeah, so
Right, so
So
A,
then
we're saying it again.
take A out.
But I think
And
you
then-
do want to say that pick some bogey of a mile or whatever from the center and say allow denser housing there, because if they find soils for the septic and water, then, why not?
Right, yeah, and that can be decided once we get to the zoning part of it.
The plan commission had to be on careful of what they say here than we do.
That's true.
This,
So,
the strategy is redundant, but
No, I think
consistency
it's-
makes me happy,
I
so,
think it's really good. I think it's really clear.
okay.
Oh, what about, I saw in that document, someone was talking about having 5-story buildings. And it's like,
Have what?
they wanted to allow up to 5 stories buildings in the village centers, for denser housing, was in that, in the draft there. And it's like, how are you going to do that? Fire trucks, I think we discussed this last
I
night.
think other than fire trucks, I don't see a problem with it, but,
Elevator cost.
well, that's up to them to decide.
Well,
Yeah, over 3 stories, you can, over 2 stories.
I understand that, but that's up to the builder to decide to go 5 stories or not. It's like, we're not gonna zone them based on elevator.
Oh, Richmond, they looked at their zoning regulations, they said highest you can be is 35 feet, and there has to be some egress that's no more than 30 feet from the ground, because they're thinking of their fire trucks trying to get up to people on the top floor if there's a fire.
The length of the ladder.
Yeah, so I think, we talk about making ourselves consistent with our neighbors. I think 3 stories, and then like you said, you need elevators, you need, so.
yeah,
and
well,
I don't
we're
think
not
we-
suggesting that anywhere, right?
Right,
Nope.
Yeah,
It was in the other document.
yeah,
But I would also add that, 5-story building would be completely out of character for Jericho.
Yeah.
And.
After 50 years of this zoning, yes.
So on
Be out
draft
of character
2,
for Richmond. Be out
we
of
can
character
argue
for-
if the 5-story
Yes.
building is in draft 2, we can take on that conversation
Right.
at that time. Multi-unit housing.
If I'm not mistaken, Jericho has still within its regulations, you cannot build trailer parks. Trailer parks.
No,
It is or it is
It's
not.
not.
I think.
Don't
would be
think it
against the
is.
law.
I think I looked it up and
I
it,
remember reading it at some point. Manufactured housing was.
Yeah.
It was illegal here. And it's,
No bylaw shall have the effect of excluding mobile home parks from the municipality.
other than you
Vermont
need
state
10
law.
acres, other than you need 10 acres for each one.
Well, no,
Are they
there's
gonna
there's
make
one right
that?
here on the side of the road.
I'm saying, but if we were to build a park,
Okay.
No bylaw shall have the effect of excluding mobile home. parks.
And what's the date of that?
That's Act 24. That's current bylaw,
Okay.
the current Vermont statute.
Yes, that may.
Oh, yeah, no, it was, yeah, I don't know when it
Jericho.
was. Yeah, I don't know when it was enacted.
all right, anything on these last three here? Multi-unit housing, additional areas, and increasing capacity that we need to wordsmith or tweak or remove.
So do we have anything, and this would be for us, planning commissioner, or zoning board, but anything that says that, because I remember Heidelberg has this, that if you're building denser, smaller housing, it can't be something experimental, it can't be cheaper materials. I mean, like in the structure, you can't reduce, insulation and stuff like that. And it's to basically make it look like it's a low income house. So do we have any regulations like that? I know in California, that was an issue too.
Yeah, probably in the Jericho, Riverside character zoning. Something like that.
is that a regulation in order to get the bonus?
If you want the density for the bonus,
Right,
you can't do it by trying to cheapen the building.
Right.
Yeah.
And making it obviously look like it's,
right,
less quality construction, less insulated.
and get the bonus,
And get the bonus, yeah.
yeah,
Now,
So-
if you own a piece of land with the little hand shed that you want to live in, so that's fine.
right. So that would be a good thing to include in the PUD.
The last piece is when we look at the town plan should reflect it, we are.
Yeah,
That's kind of a. Not quite mom and apple pie, but it's sort of a statement of the obvious.
It will be a change of Jericho's character to act this way.
Making cheaper looking houses.
Pardon?
No.
No, we're talking about that.
Oh,
Being aware that we're part of Chittenden County, not an isolated entity. I think the everyday MMU sending school buses to Barry may become very dated very quickly. Hopefully it does.
So we'll have to, yes.
What about this thought, because this is a thought that I've come across elsewhere. That's reflected there, that if you want to have services, restaurants, etc., that you have to have kind of housing for the people that provide the labor. That's, to me, that's kind of a core principle of why there should be affordable housing. So I think that's why that's there. You think it's just a proclamation that it's, I don't know whether it'll inform the town plan in any way, but if somebody likes that, they could put it in the town plan.
The town plan doesn't reflect the needs of the region. We haven't thought that way in the past.
CCRPC tells us what we are. Bedroom community to serve Greater Burlington.
Yeah, and that's actually.
That does not have the force of law, and the town, literally, if you read the town plan, it really doesn't talk about, it really doesn't talk about the region or the region's needs.
No, it's true that the town plan is very insular. It kind of reflects the opinions and needs of the people that are already living
Desire,
there.
yes.
By definition, that's kind of a catch-22, I think, because also the way that, of course, there was outreach to the community. It's the community of people that already live here that were asked for their input. I think every town plan probably suffers from that kind of
Yeah, right.
catch-22.
Like like
Yeah.
surveying our.
So I don't know whether that
Housing needs.
serves any function there, but that's kind of why it's there to kind of. If that makes it into the
Because I
town
would put that
plan.
as one of the opening statements. Rather than a closing. This is
Okay.
an opening.
Yeah.
If we're making a presentation, it's a pretty good close, and that's where I would hope the conversation starts, like after you go through the presentation.
Well, yeah, so we're gonna send this to the planning commission.
Yes, but we're gonna present it to the select board. I hope.
Well, for now, I think I haven't thought that far. I think at this version, we're kind of editing in order to send it to the.
We'll send it to the
planning
PC.
commission.
We'll send a copy to the select
You're
board.
always thinking a step further.
I would like to just suggest that this not be, we are not staff of the planning commission. You know, this is like what we're saying right now about what we think needs to happen. It's time because the planning commission can use it right now, but we're gonna give it to them. We report to the select board. And we need to report out, you know, and then, and we should do it simultaneously with the planning commission. This is like the output of our work for the last year.
Are we ready to make a motion?
I just have one thing.
Mhm.
So I see this thing about the county, but then again, I was surprised to learn this a month or so ago, but the busing the MMU, is that something that should be one of the footnotes? Because I'm trying to see how that connects with the top part there. Talking about hospitals and stuff, and I'm saying, oh, by the way, MMU is busing kids out to Barry.
Oh, you think it doesn't connect, really?
Yeah, I think it kind of distracts from the final statement here.
Maybe that could go next to something earlier.
Let's take it out. Under affordability, but that's a definition.
Maybe under 5, identify additional areas. We need this because.
Yeah. That would be good for us.
And I would change that from today to in August of 2023, this happened.
That was June. That was June 2023.
And how long did it last?
I just talked to there's our high schools have homeless coordinators, and I spoke with them, the homeless coordinator who said, and John Alberghini.
But so how long was the busing going on for?
I don't know, at that time.
Well, June is when school gets out, so probably we don't know.
Had it been going on for a year?
Oh, before
3
that,
years?
before
Had
that.
it been going
I
on for
see.
2 weeks?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Saying at that point.
So I
It
don't.
goes on long enough that there was a homeless coordinator. CVU has a homeless coordinator. Essex has a homeless coordinator.
Lincoln has one, and yeah.
Right, so that implies an ongoing.
Yeah, that's
issue.
true, but it doesn't imply that there are ongoing being bus to Barry and Colchester.
We
It implies that
that's
there's
what we were,
ongoing
that's what we
need for
were doing in June. We can just say that. I mean, these are all the for instances. It's not a statistical database. It's like, hey, you know what? The hack that happens once was news to me.
It is to all of us, I think.
All right.
You want to make a motion?
I move that we present this as now written and edited.
How about we get a final version to review and then present? And make sure all the changes got in. That looks like they were. I see you tracked the changes.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another meeting at which point the draft is already.
I would like to make an
I
amendment.
removed.
I would like to make an amendment, friendly amendment, in that, if we authorize, SJ to read it one more time when she gets home or tomorrow morning and just fix anything that seems really obvious. or?
The only thing that I
or clerical,
haven't,
or a better way to say something.
the only thing that I need to double check is the footnotes. I don't know if all of the footnotes are still correct.
Did we pull out that bit about the transportation study?
We did.
It's fine, just good with footnotes.
Later,
Well, I just,
unless it's-
they automatically update for me, so I was just
Use
doing
that
it by
rights management,
hand
but
is.
like-
A long way with asterisks.
Citation. You know, citation.
Yeah.
Okay. Does someone want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Aye. I will send this to everybody tonight,
And then you're gonna send it to.
and then I'm gonna send it to the planning commission, CC
And the
David,
select board.
and to the select board.
How about to like,
Do you want,
how
the
about
select board
like,
to take an action on this? If you're sending it to them, is there an action we want them to take? If it's just an FYI, that's fine too.
I think, well, my intention was to send it to them to say, these are the priority of the Affordable Housing Committee, for the town plan.
Is the expectation that they will include these in the town plan for the?
The expectation is that the select board would be that they would read this, and in their review of the town plan that they get presented, they would take these into consideration. That they're
select
represented.
board taking them into consideration when they review it.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry.
That's for the select board. That's the expectation for the select board.
Please be sure to tell them, we're sending this to you, the expectation that you want to agree with it, and two, will bear this in mind as you review the town plan.
Well, I think we should get on their agenda.
Okay. All right, friends, it's 8:23.
So you presented with other committees though. When you presented,
To the planning commission?
One by one.
should we copy them? Like,
Could send it to all the chairs.
this whole thing needs, we gotta sell it now.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 4. It is 8:24. Okay, and so the reviewing and responding to DRB applicants. We've touched on this at our last meeting. This has been a priority in our work plan for at least 2 years now. And it's not something that has been executed on. So we're gonna bring it back to full committee and work on it together as a group. The way that I see it, there are really 3 key stages for that occur. First of all, DRB applicants are told by Chris to reach out to other committees, including ours, to provide their application materials to receive comment. So the first step is notification. When that email gets sent to me, someone or some subcommittee needs to volunteer to be the recipient of those materials. So when I get that email, I need to send it off to somebody.
I feel like I'm getting very invested. with
I'd
it.
like to do that too.
Okay,
I can be included on that.
love it.
It's always fun to see who's building what.
It is fun. Okay.
It is.
Um,
Agree, you're gonna need to.
Okay, so instead, I'm gonna send it out to everybody, but, so that,
So then the
so that
question's
means
what
that
I
the
do.
full committee is agreeing to review DRB applications as they come in and talk about them each meeting.
Could I suggest that a committee be responsible for reading them and like characterizing them? And like, this is this, and you know, this is what it is, like, which, you know, I'd be happy to, you know,
Okay, so
So-
someone
I
is
think it's
presenting,
somebody's job.
someone is presenting.
And
Okay.
everybody can pursue their interests.
The other,
Just have a quick question, because I keep getting smacked by Eric when I send notes to people. Can we get these and then discuss them on?
No.
ourselves?
well,
One-on-one.
you can talk one-on-one, but we can't talk as a group.
So we can't CC everyone.
I can CC everyone with the material, the resources that I'm sending out, any commentary, thoughts, opinions,
Frederica,
discussion.
they can talk,
You
I
guys can
to
talk
Charles,
one-on-one.
we
Yeah,
can't talk,
we can't talk as a quorum.
okay.
So three
So-
of you could
So
talk.
at some point, we had, like, we tried this before, and you have liaisons to all the committees, right?
Correct.
So we had like two people. I know that I was one of them. I don't know who the other one was for the DRB.
Richard has been
Okay.
on this for a bit.
So what is the, you
So-
know, because that's what I've been doing. And I'm, you know, I can present the last two meetings that they had, that I watched. I think that what we need to do is figure out a list of things that we want to always check off on those applications and how we want to, you know, then respond to them.
So there's, let me finish my pitch and then, so there's the notification. I get an email, I can send it out to people. There are also applicants that don't send their materials. And so checking the DRB agenda and the website fairly regularly to see who's coming before them and to gather those materials, I think is worth doing. Because just relying on an applicant pinging me isn't good enough. So one is kind of that piece. Two is the review and the response. I think that, as you're saying, having a checklist of things that we are looking for as we're reviewing things, there may be things that pop out at you too, but there's always a list of things that we can be looking for, and we can talk about what that list should be. In addition to a response, I think that it would be easy enough to make a boilerplate template response. There's always going to be some recommendations that we're going to make to everybody. And so those two kind of rubrics, documents, templates, we should figure out, put together. And then that will become part of the review and response process. And then the final piece is attending meetings, and liaisons. I would think would be the ones that are attending meetings. Are we speaking at meetings? Are you just attending to see what's going on? More that we can discuss there. But I think that those are the three kind of prongs, one of them being just a process question, the second being content and review, and then the third being attendance and participation.
Well, I really like where you're going in terms of the system. I think it would be good for us to communicate with applicants like right at the beginning.
Mhm.
And maybe it's like a one pager that says, you know, well, Chris can hand something and say, hey, this is from the housing committee, you got to send them your stuff. They're going to want to talk to you about this.
One
And then you
pager
have
that
in
Chris can
there
hand out.
Sort of consider adding septic now for an ADU.
Yeah,
You know, have, you know, just whatever here's, they're gonna want to talk to you, this is gonna, what they're gonna want to talk about.
I love that idea.
And then, you know, we have that we have that conversation. And then we can comment, once something's really submitted, then, you know, we can, comment, but I think our comments should be kind of focused on that. That list, so
Yep.
like surprising people.
Yep.
It would be interesting also for us to develop a checklist on the application that first comes in. Is this appropriate for us to look at? So somebody who's got a DRB and they're gonna be doing 2 units subdivision on a 3-acre lot. Do we have a comment on that?
We do. Well, if they're building, yes.
Yeah, there's a 3-acre, there's a 5-acre lot on or road that's been subdivided into 3 lots, keeping 1 lot, the other 2 are out there.
Would
Do
you?
we comment on that? What is our comment going to be?
Hey, you might want to have a bigger septic for X, Y, and Z. It's only, the price difference is only this and the benefit is
For
blah, blah,
adding,
blah.
an ADU later,
Um,
maybe designing, think about designing that in. Did you know that you could build a 4-plexer, a 3-plexer, 4-plex there? Just making sure their imagination, they're coming into a single family home monolith, and they may feel at that point that proposing a 4-plex would be out of character and something that people would oppose, and I'm not going to bother trying to get that done in Jericho. And if they had some communication in Jericho saying, you could actually do a 3-plex or 4-plex on that lot, I'd like to communicate that to them.
Does that become browbeating at some point?
You
That
know-
that didn't sound like browbeating to me. That was more, and having heard of the most recent DRB, the applicant was surprised when the DRB people brought up the possibility of having more density than what the applicant was planning on. And said something like, well, I haven't seen that in other counties. So I think that maybe there is a need to let them know that Jericho actually is interested in affordable, in this kind of thing more than maybe other places where they're looking to develop. I was surprised by that. And it doesn't have to be browbeating if it's like if it's like a pretty structured list that we could, everybody. It comes from structure.
Like on the Morgan Road one, I would have liked to have been able to say to the guy, just look and see if the economics are any better building 16 2-bedroom apartments. Because you've shown that you have the septic to do that. So we need in this town. They all start out by saying, we want to work with you, we want to blah, blah, blah. Well, this is in a town plan, this is what we need. You can do, the regulations are the regulations, but
So let's think about,
also the HOAs commenting on the homeowners agreement.
yes. So let's start with the, so I will start, instead of forwarding, just to Richard and Stacy, I will start forwarding applicants to the whole group. Frederica, and this is not the end of the conversation. I'm just cognizant of time. And so I want to make a little bit of progress on this and then get to other agenda items too. And we will continue this moving forward. Frederica, you're going to keep an eye on what's on the agenda in the DRB meetings.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. That's what I want to do for sure.
Okay, great. And then let's start with for next meeting, hammering out this 1-pager that Chris, I love that idea that Chris can hand out at the very beginning of the process, that includes our contact information, but also has a list of the kind of things that we want to be looking for, and would probably consist of a bunch of these kinds of suggestions too.
It also is going to prompt Chris to have that conversation, because I think Chris is really quite supportive of what we're trying to do. I mean,
And I think that 1-pager can work as a template for us for a launching off point in terms of figuring out what our review and responses look like. That'll at least start to get things listed. Does that make sense to everybody as immediate next steps? Do you, Chuck, feel comfortable starting to pull what that list might look like? The kinds of things that might be on the one pager?
Sure.
And does anyone else?
I've already said the ones that are on my mind.
Yeah.
So if there are others.
Does anyone else want to team up and brainstorm some of those
I
items
can
with
ask
Chuck?
Chris too.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I've,
I'll call Chris just so I understand like that moment, like what happens.
Hmm.
So people come in,
and I've had,
where do they first talk to him? Where are they in the process when they first talk to him?
I've had a couple of conversations with Phil Newbeck, who was a previous member on the Affordable Housing Committee and is a member on the DRB. And she's got some ideas about the kinds of things that she'd like to see us provide as feedback and suggestions. So she may have some ideas as well. And did you say, Chuck, when you talked to Chris about can we participate in DRB meetings?
Says absolutely.
We don't have to be, yeah, but in order to speak, you have to be a legally interested party, whatever that means. And I don't know if we fit that definition.
I didn't
So what happens
spend a
is
lot of
that
time on them. I just called this, my assignment coming to the last meeting was to figure out how we might participate.
Yeah,
And he said that we were invited to participate.
Okay.
As a committee member of the town, who are an interested party. We.
Really?
Yeah.
They read out who the interested parties are at the beginning.
Is that just neighbors on the budding properties?
It's abutting properties and it's a group of 10 people or more that have a legal concern. And they get sworn in at the beginning if they want to speak.
If they make comments.
Yes. So I don't know what the rules for public comment short of that are. But that's what I learned so far, but I can look into that. 'Cause there
Okay.
must be some kind of public allowance for public presence for
Well,
sure.
budding properties, public presence.
Yeah, those are the interested parties.
And that's how people from all over Jericho got to comment on the dollar store.
Okay, anything else on this for next steps before I close out this item?
I wanted to talk about. one
Yeah,
of the
please.
meetings.
Go ahead.
So just as an example, the most recent one was on July 26th. And it was about a property on Orr Road / Brown's Trace. It was a PUD applicant that wants to subdivide land there with a PUD plan. And they have a total of 7 housing sites. 4 of them are off Orr Road and 3 of them are off Brown's Trace. And in between them is 50 acres of common space. And they are in the low density residential district. The housing lots that he's planning are on off Orr Road are all greater than 7 acres. The housing lots that he's planning on the other side are smaller, they're like 1.5 acres. But the common land is like 50 acres, so would fit in any zone. I don't know why it has to be so large, because I think this is like 3 acre zoning, and even if it was 10 acre zoning, it's more than you need.
I thought we looked at a tile map. I think from the Orr Road, it comes down very steep and it's
There's a lot of wetland there.
it's wet in there.
So again, I don't know why they needed 50 acres of common land.
They took stuff that was
I think that was the total lot size that they want.
Yeah,
So they could, but I think your point is
But-
they
but
could do
that's what
more
they included.
dense.
They included it, why did they include it in the development?
But having all of that common land means that they could
Right.
have
they had to buy
more
the
density.
piece,
I
and it
understand that,
came along with it.
right,
So what they did was they said, well, this is too steep and it's very wet. So unless we put houses on stilts, we can't really build anything there.
I understand that, but if
So,
they're
but they have
building,
a-
they only need 21 acres to build the,
Yeah,
yeah,
So the
it's like, why
plat-
didn't,
The plat
why did they
shows-
include it in the
the
development?
plat shows 4 adjoining lots and each of
Mhm.
them is 7+ acres.
yeah,
Okay,
they're trying to get as much as they can there.
and then they have the 50 acres around it.
Yeah.
So they didn't show that each lot would only support one house, that they couldn't have turned this into, say, 8 lots.
It gets really steep as you get into the green part.
Right, they said there are 2 places people could put their house.
On one lot?
On one lot, yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they have subject to all of
Yeah.
that. When they're deciding.
So that was one question that came up. I didn't raise it. I think somebody else raised it. Then the next, so that was Phil. Oh, and then Phil actually raised the question, why does the HOA mandate at least 2,000 square feet per house? And so it turns out that the HOA was written in such a way that it mandates that each house that's built is to be at least 2,000 square feet.
That's the one that's down by the, those are the park that they're talking about.
No,
That's one on our road, they're doing that too.
it's just up from Parks, where Bugby's insulation in there.
So there was no good answer to that, except we don't want to live out here, basically. You know, we don't want to have neighbors that would build a smaller house. So my question was, is that even legal? Haven't found the answer to that yet.
Seems they covered it. So if they put the 3 small houses on around straight.
They also said they had to be single family homes forever.
Yes, they said that and that's definitely against the law, so that can't be enforced because they say in their HOA, and I read their HOA,
I got a
that
copy
part of
right
it.
here, it's incredible.
They say that you cannot ever build anything else other than a single family house there to be occupied by anybody else. And that goes against state law saying that you have to be able to put an ADU.
It also says that to avoid a nuisance, it has to be single family homes greater than
Right.
2,000 square feet.
So then the next thing that came up was, why not more lots? So that was the question that came up. And that's where actually the applicant said, well, you know, that's kind of how we like to do it, you know, I haven't ever heard anybody ask for more density. Then they raised some Act 250 implications. And then they said, maybe and then they said, couldn't get full density because of the sewer. So they could have gotten more density, but they couldn't get the full density that line would have
The
allowed.
shame of it is just that if there's a sewer between village,
And at that
Between the
point, there
village
was
and
an
Riverside.
there was an aside comment from one of the DRB members saying, and I quote, 7-acre lots, 2,000 square foot houses, we will never get to affordable housing. End quote.
progress,
Is the developer the original landowner?
Bugby.
No, the applicant was some kind of corporation, I think, or some kind of.
It's owned by Bugby.
Yeah, they probably
Does Bugby live on the house that was originally that's on that lot right now?
There's a bunch of Bugbys. I don't know about this one.
Subdivision application. It's North Mountain LLC.
Yeah, they have to have it come on. So need that.
So I just wanted to raise this in terms of like, you know, it seems impossible to do anything about this kind of thing,
So I think,
short of like shaming them, which is
Well,
not gonna be our style.
I don't know that we need to shame them, but I do think that having a conversation about what's possible, pushing back and asking the whys, underscore, I do think that engaging in conversation is always worthwhile. And at the moment, we don't have a formal process for handling these things, but there's no reason that we couldn't reach out and say, hey, we don't have the process formalized yet for doing a formal response, but we saw your DRB hearing and would love to hear more about what you're doing and why you're doing it the way you are, and talk about things that you might want to consider. That may be a conversation worth having.
It might, very likely too late, but the conversation could kind of drift towards. Did you consider these things and rule them out? Like how
Well, so
advise us
yeah.
on how we might approach
I've
it.
been thinking about like at which point, I looked this up, at which point do these HOAs get written, right? And you can't blame the homeowners who move in because they're not the ones who wrote that.
Exactly.
It's basically the applicant that writes that. So at which point can you kind of influence that? That's even before the application actually, or because the HOA covenant has to be submitted as part of the application.
So the one thing we can do on that, have Jericho's, either zoning laws or some other regulations, say that an HOA that does not allow for diverse housing sizes is not permitted in any district.
So
I'm operating on the assumption we can say that or something.
Yeah,
Have something to that effect.
I don't know that we can, but I think it's worth finding out. And I mean, you were at the meeting. Members of the Planning Commission are wondering these same questions and what we can and can't do in terms of HOAs. It might be worthwhile for us to find some example boilerplate language that we could supply.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're reading is boilerplate language.
Exactly.
It's like, I can't imagine, I mean, would they really make basically, you're not allowed to dry clothes in the front of the house. And that to me just doesn't,
See, this says that,
clothesline has to be hidden behind the house.
I mean, that, we have
And
to
that
focus
just doesn't
on
seem like
stuff that-
something that
Yeah.
somebody would put in. I mean, that seems like a boilerplate.
They probably got it somewhere, yeah.
Yeah,
It was very standard in a lot of HOAs that we went back in the
yeah,
90s.
yeah.
So this kind of feeds into a little bit of
Having your polka dots on your house is not allowed in most HOAs.
agenda
There was a bunch of stuff.
number 5, which is how to be a YIMBY, and we're not going to have a lot of time to talk about this, but would anyone volunteer to do a little HOA digging in terms of finding some boilerplate language, finding some HOAs that are friendly to affordable, small, diverse housing?
I
I
can
think we
dig
should
around.
Try to get the HOAs. I mean, you have an HOA. Send us your agreement.
If I could ever find it again.
Yeah.
So, because I think that this is a two-pronged thing. On the one hand, I think that this is going to be important for DRB review and response. On the other hand, I do want to start thinking about how we can get Jericho residents who are interested in housing and in addressing this to feel empowered and give them a list of things that they can be thinking about or doing. And one of those things I think should be looking at your own HOA, finding out how to make amendments and changes to make sure that your HOAs are more inclusive and less exclusive.
And this one has a provision that allows the member, there's 65% of the members vote on a change. They can make a change after some number of years.
yeah, that's what we had.
That's kind of standard. too.
Pardon? You have,
Yeah, I think we had a HOA and it was the same thing. After 3 years or whatever, you could change it, but it was like, we don't want you putting junk cars on cement blocks in your yard.
So I think as
So
a
I can
committee,
do
we need to do,
research on like
Real
the law,
life.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Vermont state
Rural
law,
life here.
because there's there's
I
a
mean,
section of the law
I
that
was the
applies to
worst person because I
HOAs.
said I
There's two
didn't want
types of
anyone
HOAs. and
mowing
it's
the
very
field
detailed.
until,
Perhaps we want
October
to look at,
from
but I
there.
can look at that.
Okay,
And I can try to dig around and try to see if I can find HOAs that, like some kind of HOAs that are.
The state
Because I think we need to
What's
be-
his name? Who presented,
Good for-
the guy, who was the guy who presented from the state, who was really good, I watched on Zoom.
oh, what's his face from VHFA? Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
That
blanking
guy.
on his name right now.
Actually, yeah, I know the
But-
chair, I know the director of the HFA, so I can ask her.
But I think that we need to be, we as a committee need to be a resource in how to go about doing this. And also, I think it will be, it'll generate some excitement if we can empower some because it's going to be too big of a lift for us to go through all the HOAs in town and suggest changes and but if we can get folks in the community who are interested in doing this to look into their own HOAs and to talk to their neighbors and to generate a movement, I think that can be really powerful
And
for,
that kind of does feed into the YIMBY.
that's exactly right.
You could start with yours.
I think you're right.
When's your annual meeting?
We have I don't want to talk, we have
Is there public
monthly, we have a monthly meeting
That's the way.
for our which I think is also the same group that was in charge of the covenant.
That would be a good, but for you to share that story. You know, your discovery. I mean, you really weren't aware of it, and then you looked it up and you saw it. And
Yeah.
realized, oh my, that testimony.
Yeah.
is Good.
And I think we should all be thinking along those lines, but also kind of becoming experts in this so that we can help our neighbors do it.
Does this mean the HOAs are on file if they're part of?
Yes, I was talking to Jessica about this and I think they're part of the land use records. And so they should all be on file.
I think they're included in their deed.
But I think that they're publicly. Yeah, I think that they're publicly available. I think that we could, if we
Oh,
wanted
great.
to go digging, you love doing that,
Yeah, I
right?
love doing it.
Digging into, see if that's true.
Almost too new for me, but yeah.
Just.
It was just fade in the 70s.
Another, I've moved on to item number 5. Another question that I think that we should try to get some answers to is, we've talked about this before, but a lot of us, our septic systems are failing, our leach fields are failing, and we're having to renew and re-up since all of our homes were built like 30 years ago or so. It's about time. So everybody's kind of in a similar boat. I'd love to have some information about exactly how easy or hard it is and the cost difference and the logistics of expanding when you're doing that re-up, expanding to one more bedroom. How hard is it to do that, and how pricey is it?
And how much is it?
To change the
When you're
septic
building a new one,
capacity.
how much more is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if it's a tank, you have to dig up your tank and put a new one in. But they come in, I think they come in fixed sizes, right? They're gallons, 1,000 gallons, 1250.
Would you mind, Wayne, looking into that and seeing?
You don't usually have to replace the tank, it's the field you replace.
But the tank needs to be bigger to digest everything.
Right.
So the tank is sited for the.
If I'm replacing my septic field.
Yeah.
The tank is a significant added expense to it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just digging up the leach field and putting it in, or.
But she's talking about expanding, not replacing. And
Yeah, but I
And
mean, if
then
you
the
want
point
to,
is, if you expand, you're gonna have to put in a bigger tank in both
Yeah.
cases.
or you expand at the time where you need to.
that's all,
replace
so
it.
I already know more than I didn't know any of this.
If you expand at the time you're replacing your leach field, by expanding and adding to your tank,
Yeah.
you're adding significantly more expenses. Because you have to dig up the tank and the leach field, as opposed to just digging up the leach field and relocating.
And so when you're getting,
it's late, what's the word?
When you're getting your septic pumped out, they're pumping out.
When you're filing with the state and they're saying, yeah, your system meets this number of bedrooms. That is based on the tank size
And the leach field that you have.
and the leach field. And so is there ever a case where my tank is actually bigger than I might think because it only comes in fixed sizes?
Possible you bought, if you have a 4-bedroom.
Not in
house.
that development.
No, I'm not talking about me. We're not talking about my backyard and my leach field.
If you
I'm
have a
talking about
4-bedroom house
as a community member
And the
who's,
tank size was, you had a choice between 3 and a 5-bedroom house, and you've got a 4-bedroom, then your tank size.
then your tank
could
size
be
is
bigger.
5, so it could be bigger.
But I don't know how you find out what your tank size is without.
You look back in your
You-
deed, right?
No,
You look
but
back
that
into
is-
something.
no, you're,
It just went through it, and
That's in
she
your
said that
construction costs.
originally they were told,
your system is on file with the state.
yeah, it's on file somewhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Because she said they were told something wrong, and then when they dug it up.
You can go in the
it's
state,
wrong.
put in an address and I can look at your septic plan. if I want.
It's 8:56. Before I move on, Dave, you joined us a little later, and I do want to give you an opportunity for public comment if you've got anything you'd like to share with us, and if not, that's okay too.
I've been here for most of the meeting. Yeah, three points. The form-based code in Riverside.
Yep.
The wording, I had to leave during the time you might have discussed that. Is it still essentially the same as what you brought into the meeting?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
Yes.
because I think it accurately says that form-based code for Riverside is hindering things. Is that Greg?
Yes, it says the
Is that Greg's?
the
opinion?
Riverside form-based code hinders rather than eases.
Yeah,
Yep.
is that Greg Tetro's opinion? Yeah. I don't think we want
Among
to,
others, but yeah.
I don't think we want to give form-based code a bad rep. Because I did go to a panel discussion with the Winooski town manager and some of her employees and the developer of Casavan Outlook. And the developer was saying that the form-based code saved him several months. So he was extolling it. Chuck, did you, these kids getting bused back and forth, what year was that?
I
2000.
spoke with,
22 or 23?
That was this year.
This year? Okay, all right. I thought you
Yeah,
said
so there was
22.
a point in time in the beginning of June. I spoke to both the superintendent, who I learned from him that it was happening. And he says, yeah, it happens, we've been doing it, we've been doing it for years. We have a homeless coordinator. And that was news to me.
Yeah, there's other reasons why these kids get bused back and forth. I was a driver for when Department of Children and Family takes a kid out of a home and puts it in another school district. Puts that child in another school district. The state pays to have that kid taken back and so they can finish up the school year.
Yeah, that's not what this is. They were
Yeah.
they were part of the homeless program in the hotels.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Specifically in the hotels.
Yeah. The third of three things was having this committee make comments back to the Development Review Board and to the applicant. I don't think we should have any reluctance to say our 2 cents. I mean, maybe the DRB is reluctant to say, you're asking for 3 units. You could put 4 on there. And we could take the onus off of them and say, this is the Affordable Housing Committee, and this is what we think. And this is our committee goals. And so we're just giving you information that tells you how you could meet some goals. So we should say those things proudly. That's it.
No, I think you're right. When you look at what we are supposed to do, is we're supposed to advise other committees, and not the DRB is explicitly mentioned as one of the committees that we are supposed to advise. So, yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
It's 9:00, so any really pressing updates or other business?
Just wanted to say I liked your presentation to the planning commission.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you. That always makes me very, very
Watched it, but I
nauseous.
Read the slides carefully. I thought they were great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, the September meeting, we will come back to PUDs. We'll have a farmer's market table the Thursday following our meeting, so we'll talk about that. And we will also talk about draft 2 of the town plan. So there'll be lots to get through.
Do we get to see it
Mhm.
before?
Yeah, it should be, if it's not available on Friday, it will definitely be available by August 15th, right? By your meeting.
It'll be pretty public. Yeah, it's true. It's gonna be on the website.
Yeah. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn? Thanks, Wayne. I saw Chuck second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Davis. Nice to see you.
Thank you.